So you have finally gotten to the point where you've completed your door and it functions and opens, and we see that there's a space behind it. So let's talk about what we're going to do with this space. In this space, you have lots of freedom to be creative. You can come up with your own solution to what's behind the door. I'm going to encourage you to think about compositionally using the whole space, thinking about whether you want it to be a realistic drawing or whether you want this to be something that's a little bit more creative and imaginative, which is what I would encourage you to do. So the other thing you want to think about is, what do you want the audience to feel when the door's opened? Do you want them to be surprised, shocked, scared, excited, happy, sad? These are all things you want to think about as you're choosing your subject matter for behind the door. So I am going to go through a tutorial and talk about some things you could consider. I actually have my own idea for what I want to do with this, but I'm going to walk you through a basic tutorial so that if you're not feeling super confident, you can explore this concept with me and get some ideas. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do and that I would have you do is you're going to lightly sketch around that open door frame. Okay, so that's the first thing you're going to do. You're then going to flip the page in your visual journal so that what you have left is a page that looks like this. Okay? The next thing I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you think about this being the main focal point of the drawing, but we're also going to be dividing this paper in half. So this is 8 inches, so we're going to mark 4 inches at the top here and 4 inches at the bottom. What I'm going to do is lightly connect those with my pencil. Okay, so this is the space we're going to be working within for the last step in the assignment. This area can be left blank. There's also another really cool option that I have for you and how you can use this page as well for this assignment if you're an overachiever or you're feeling really creative. Yeah, I wanted to do something that was a little bit shocking or a little bit scary to the viewer when they open the door. So I'm going to go through a tutorial in which we do a dragon or kind of monster eye that's going to show behind the door. So what I'm going to think about first of all is that I want that eye to be nice and big. So it's a close-up of this dragon. So not only is it surprising and shocking because it's a dragon, but because of the size of the eye. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the middle of this door, approximately the middle, is I'm going to start sketching very, very lightly a circle. And as I said before, I want this to be rather large, so I'm going to fill up most of the center of the door with my sketched circle, very, very lightly. Now again, this doesn't have to be a dragon's eye. It could be something completely different. But what you're thinking about is your size as you're drawing this in here, okay? And how do you make this really something interesting or surprising? All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start laying out the shape of this eye, and I'm going to essentially think about going on a diagonal, but instead of using a straight line, I'm going to use a gentle S curve. So I'm going to start it down here, and it's going to essentially gentle S curve up. It's going to cut off the top of that eyeball. Okay, because that's essentially going to become an eyeball. So You can adjust that until you have it just right, but make sure that you're drawing lightly. Okay, from here, I'm gonna do a curved triangle. Okay, so what it means is it's gonna look almost like a dagger. So I'm going to come down probably from about the center. So if this is about the center, I'm going to start on this side and I'm gonna curve a line down like a very sharp tooth or dagger. And I'm gonna have it come back up on the other side. Okay. Now, of course, whatever you put behind here doesn't have to be scary. Let's say you just wanted to do like an owl's eye, or you want to do, you know, a pot of gold, whatever it is, just be thinking about where you're putting it compositionally. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to map out areas for some reflections in the eye. And I'm going to come in here and just slightly kind of map out some area that I'm going to do a different color. So kind of just wiggling my pencil around. In there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come below here and I'm going to put a line in that's going to help me guide me through my drawing. So it's going to come up, so I'm going to start here, come down, maybe cut off just a little bit of the bottom of the eye, and it's going to come back up, and it's going to curve up into here. Okay, so the next thing I did was I came down here below and drew a line that mimics or imitates the line I just put in. So it's going to come down, and it's going to curve back up. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and map out kind of the eyelid of the dragon. And I hope that as you're working, you're pausing this video if you're following along, doing a line, following along with the lines I'm drawing, then unpausing and coming back to it. Okay, so you should be slowing this down. Okay, I'm going to come down here and draw in my next line. So from there, you can add in all sorts of different details. You can make any type of adjustment to this dragon that you want. So what I did was I went in and started planning out just some spikes, or almost like horns. So each one that I put in, the next one behind it kind of follows the line from it. So the next thing I think I'm going to do is go ahead and clean up some of these lines that I've done. Okay, from there, I'm going to come down to to this line that I drew, and I'm going to add in some spikes or horns, whatever you want to call these, coming out of this bottom part of the lid. So these ones are really going to curve more up this way. Remember that it is okay to go off the page when you draw. You don't have to try and force it all to fit in the same spot right there. Okay, so now if you want to go in and add any other spikes or horns, whatever you want to call them, and you certainly could, I'm going to do, I think, one more layer, but I'm going to make these ones shorter, and I'm going to make them overlap. So I'm going to come in here. These ones are going to overlap in there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some scales essentially to this guy and give him some of that, what we imagine to be dragon-like texture in here, which really, I think, transforms the drawing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, starting right here, just going to do essentially a line up with the curve and a line down. Okay, so like basically a rounded rectangle. And another one. And I'm going to follow the curve of the guideline I drew to begin with. And these are getting a little bit smaller as they go out towards the edge. Okay, then when I go back in for the next layer of them, what I will do is I will overlap the placement. So what I mean by that, it's almost like laying bricks. So when we look at bricks, they never line straight up. It's the same idea here. So we're going to come up from the center of this one and land in the center of that one. We're going to do that again. So I'm coming up from the center of this one, and I'm landing down in the center of this one. Great thing about working in pencil is that you can always make adjustments as you're working. I know there are a lot of tutorials out there where people go in and use Sharpie, and that's fine. Drawing with that way is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but pencils are great because if we draw lightly enough, we can erase, which means we don't feel the need to constantly start on a new piece of paper. On the other hand, working in Sharpie is nice because you put a line down and it's there and you can't make adjustments, so you're just kind of stuck with it, and you either have to move on and keep working or you've got to start over. So each has its benefits. Okay, so I'm going to do another layer of scales here. So you're starting to see these. You can also go back in and round some of these edges, especially along that bottom lid. Okay, so I'm going to move down to the bottom now and put some on here. So I'm going to follow the curve that I have sketched out here. And I'm going to do essentially my first layer of scales underneath the eye right here. So I'm going to come down here. And curve that out. So I'm really using that line to form the size of the scales. Okay, so now I can come back below here and start. And obviously some of your scales are going to be larger and some are going to be smaller, and that is exactly what we're looking for. With some variation. Go a little bit wider. So I'm getting pretty close to this line here. So I'm actually going to bring this one down, have it touch that line below. Yours doesn't have to. This is just an example. It's always okay for your artwork to look different. Alright, so I've got a pretty good start on my dragon eye. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is flip this over and take a peek at what it looks like when I open it. It's looking pretty good. So what it really is going to need is some paint, which I will do at some point. But for now, I think all I'm going to do is go ahead and finish up my drawing.